So today, a new day of wrenching. I have to wait for some parts to come in to work on the pinion, to get the pinion seal fixed and to do the rest of the torque tube. I've got a new pin coming which I drove out to separate the shaft, and there'll be a little bit of a delay. So I'm going to do something else today, which is work on the fuel gauge, which is showing empty all the time. And then maybe even take a look at draining and dropping the gas tank to see if I can take care of a little seepy, creepy kind of leak that happens at the very top of the tank, only when the car has been completely filled up. It's a fast enough of a leak and annoying enough of a smell that I'm just going to have to get it fixed one way or the other, either with a different tank or a better sending unit seal or I don't know what. But I think I'm going to start with doing something different, which is just working on the gas tank gauge. So on the car here, it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to try to read everything to you here, but the gas gauge system is pretty simple. 2 units. There's a dash unit in the instrument cluster, the part that you read. One terminal of that dash unit is connected to the ignition switch. That way when you turn the ignition switch on, that's when the gas gauge reads. Then the other terminal of the dash unit goes all the way by a single wire to the tank unit, and then the tank unit is grounded to the tank to complete the circuit. So that's kind of what describes the entire circuit, and it's not a fused circuit. I checked, at least from what I could see from the fuse diagram. And they also have a little section here on just some quick troubleshooting here, and if the gas gauge shows full under all conditions, then look for some type of an open circuit, and if it shows empty all the time, make sure you have ground in your wiring between the dash and the tank unit, and also look for reversed connections on the dash unit. So instead of pulling towards full, maybe it's pulling hard towards empty. Which can certainly be a concern on this car, because I don't know if it's been rewired for positive ground by someone and they just didn't realize what the impact might be on the gas tank unit. So anyway, let's see if we can find some of these components and do the low-level stuff, which is to trace the wires and make sure that we just have ground like we're supposed to and that the wires are actually connected. So here I'm laying on the floor here, and you can see the fuel gauge there, and that's located right above the ignition switch. So if I find the ignition switch and look directly above, I should be able to make out which connections will be here for the fuel. All right, let's get this camera going here. Well, okay, I'm gonna have to put the camera down and get myself situated. So I was gonna check my wiring connection at the ignition switch, and I see that right here, this square piece of metal here has been put up in front of my ignition switch, and I believe it is connected by 2 safety head type screws underneath, no doubt to keep people with dastardly intents of hot wiring your car, getting access to the ignition, something to foil them. I think I'm going to try to remove those safety head screws there and get rid of that shield before I go any further, because I can't see the connection there. Alright, so I just kind of bent that shield out of the way a little bit there. There wasn't hardly nothing there to it. And it's a mess in behind here for you to see, but all I can tell you is that there's 2 wires that are pretty close to each other. And I'm going to zero in on one of them, that guy right there. That one is feeding power to the back of the gas gauge. And if I get on here, I've got my fluke meter kind of out where I can see a little bit here. And let's see if I can get a good ground going over here. Gotta switch it on, Dell. I had switched off the car a second ago. There we go. I've got my leads kind of reversed here a little bit, but as you can see, I've got 6 volts going to the gauge. So we have power with the ignition on to the gas. All right. So the wire to the left, let's see if I can find it here. Hold on. There's one. All right, where is it? I don't know if the camera's going to cooperate very well with me to try to find these wires for you. So yeah, that one right there in the dead center of camera, that was power to the gauge. The one black kind of connector coming right out of there, that was leaving the gauge. And it disappears in this spaghetti into this harness that disappears back and should end up back by the gas tank. So we're going to climb out from here and see how we're doing back there. I had a little bit of current from that other side of the gas gauge coming out. I don't know if it's normally reduced coming out or not. But we did, I had some amount of current coming out. Let's go see. Hopefully we have continuity from that wire all the way back to the gas tank. Let's see if we can find a loss of ground or something back there by the tank. So I did trace the wire. There is a wire up underneath there. You can barely see it on top of the tank, and I don't know how well it's grounded. I know I'm going to drop the tank anyway, so I'm going ahead and I'm cleaning up these threads that got spray painted over with a dye here, and I've already gotten this one cleaned up over there. We'll drain the tank. There's actually a drain plug on the tank. What a nice thing. And we'll see what we have here for our sending unit and our wiring. Well, like everything in my life, that little drain fought me right till the very, very end, but with some penetrating oil and that's a square head on there, so I put a 3/8 drive extension on there, and then got on this end with a crescent that hardened, and then I was able to loosen it up there. It's starting to go, but without this four-headed piece on there, just putting a crescent wrench on there, it was actually starting to deform the head, so I got lucky there. Let's drain off this gas. So tank has been emptied, and right up there you can see with a couple of flared end open wrenches, I disconnected the gas line. That wasn't too bad. And now I'm on the front end here of these couple of tank bolts right here. We're going to go 1, 2. I've already cleaned them up as good as I can. They've soaked in some penetrating oil, and I'm going to see if I get lucky and can just take those off. The last connection on the tank will be the electrical one up there at the top, and I'll probably put something underneath the tank here so I can let it down kind of slow. A lot of time, there's a fair amount of slack actually in that electric line there. I wouldn't be surprised if it could actually stay on the ground and not pulling that cord too hard, but I'll try to be gentle. So here we are with tank dropped on the ground. And I can already tell by looking at it right there is a little piece of probably cork. Yeah, that's a little bit of cork gasket there. There's another chunk that had just flecked away there. I was picking at that earlier there. So whatever gasket was around there is pretty much gone. I can grab this and just kind of wiggle it back and forth there. It's really not cinched down in there very, very much at all. So yeah, we just need to go ahead and air that off to get all the debris away from there, and I'm going to undo this cable here and then check and see what type of shape it's in and probably replace it. And it seems like what you wind up doing with a lot of stuff here. Check for continuity back to the gas gauge as well. There's a little, I should note for anybody else, I guess, who's doing this, there's a little retainer here that was kind of in the way. And I really forgot a lot. I should have remembered more about the neck there to the tank. I kept thinking, why are they kind of hanging up over here on this exhaust? And then I'm like, oh yeah, silly, because there's a, don't forget about your exhaust neck there. But anyway, so let's clean this up, disconnect that wire, and do a couple things. One, we'll see if we can't either make or do something better with that sealing there. and then let's work on this wire. And while it's up, see if we can't take the sending unit out and kind of start getting some readings off of it to see if we can make the gas gauge go up and down. Well, all I can tell you about that little connection guy right there is that if it ever did have a ground, it probably lost it at some point in time. I mean, it's kind of bad. Very rusted. So anyway, let's take the sending unit out here, or I should say sending unit, just tank unit. Rheostat arm in there that lifts up and down and tells you whether or not there's high or low level. And let's get that gasket replaced. And while it's out, we'll play with the lever and see if we can't get electrical connection back and see if we can make the gas gauge go up and down. Okay. So there's our opening in the tank. Here's what's left of my gasket. This is the sending unit here. This is just a little float guy. And that right there is the arm junction there that goes up or down with the float. I'm not holding very good here, but that goes up, this goes down, up and down. That somehow changes the resistance or the current that's flowing through to that wire to take a reading off of at the gas gauge. So I think what I'll do now is clean up these electrical connections and see if I can artificially get some readings on the gas gauge front by raising and lowering this arm. Let's find out. So I cleaned up, filed off this nut, put another electrical connector down there, did some other stuff to clean all that up as good as I could. Falsely raised up this arm as if it was floating in the gas. And let's go check it out on the front of the car. Let's see if I can get my light here without dropping it through all the crud. And here you can see when you turn on the ignition that the gauge begins to jump up there a little bit there. In fact, it went all the way to full earlier. I'm not sure why it's not performing quite as much as what I wanted it to right now. I'll wiggle that connection a little bit down there and see if it makes it go full. Don't want to put a lot of strain on that. It moved, but not very much. Maybe we'll play with it some more. Well, I'm going to have to play around with that, but it's working. I did see it go to full earlier. I'll keep playing with it here and see if I can make it do it more regular. So what I've decided is I'm going to go ahead and get a replacement sending unit anyway. I just don't like that one. They're not terribly expensive, and it's something that I really don't want to go back and revisit. You actually can even buy a whole new tank if you want to, but this tank actually so far seems to be holding it up, and it's really not very hard at all to drop a gas tank on one of these. So anyway, that's what we're going to wind up doing. It's good to know that it looks like the gas gauge actually still kind of works, and it's probably set up in the correct polarity as well, so I don't have to reconnect anything back there. And since I've already got the back end out of the car and I've got some other parts coming, I'll just go ahead and see if we can't just do that. We'll get a new sending unit and get a little bit of new wire on there too when we do put it on, and that'll be what we are going to do. So it's another day, and I've decided I'm going to change up things because I'm waiting for some more parts to come in, and they're not here yet. So let's see if I can actually get under here and do any videotaping. Well, this will be a struggle, but as you can see, I'm underneath the dash by a pretty good ways. And right here is the fuse block with the old style glass fuses, and I already took one of them out because it was blown. I think I see another one there that's already blown. There's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fuses of different sizes, and I've got an assortment of glass fuses from one of the shipping places that I use, and also some light bulbs. But I think a few of these holders also look pretty rusty. So there's a product called Evaporust Gel. I'm going to take those fuses out and paint the surfaces there to kind of de-rust what I can, see if we can't get a little better electrical contact, and then we'll start replacing fuses. And there's no way that I can lay under here and do all this in videotape, but that's what I'll end up doing. It's a gel, and you just paint it on there and let it sit, and it does its thing. So I'll be back in a sec. All right, fuses have all been replaced there in the fuse block. I was able to replace all of them with a new fuse, even though I think most of them were working. The clock fuse has a strange, very short little 3 amp fuse. And though I got a 3 amp fuse, I think it was an SF type fuse versus, or I should say it was maybe an AGC style glass fuse. There is an SF automotive fuse as well that may be shorter, but anyway, the fuse still has continuity, so I say it still works, and I'm just going to go ahead and go with checking some of the rest of the accessory lights and small lights now. All right, rear license plate lamp, let's see if that one's going. Yep, we got a license plate lamp. We're legal. So it looks like speedometer and all the gauges are lit up by 4 2-candle power lamp bulbs. All right, I got some of those in my pack here. Let's see if I can find those 4 bulbs. So what you're looking at here is one of the bulb sockets, and I've pulled it out from the back of the speedometer assembly. It pulls out, you grab the metal here, and it's held in by these spring socket type holders. And I tried to twist, unscrew, pull out the bulb, and as you can see, the bulb, which was not lighting up, it may have just rusted in there and lost all contact. It wasn't coming out. So I'll fiddle with this with a pair of pliers or something to see if I can get that out, and find out what happens if you just put in a brand new bulb. So I'm not getting any interior like gauge lights or anything like that, but according to my diagram here, this right here is the fancy push-pull light switch. It's got a rheostat on it, probably for dimming and brightening your interior lights. And there's, looks like 2 wires coming off of it to going to the instruments, and then another 2 over here. So I'm going to see if those are actually connected there, and if that's my problem. It might be a little bit of a challenge to see underneath the dash to see if those are actually connected though. So here's a diagram of the switch, and I didn't feel any wires connected up here to the instruments and clock or the map lights. Those 2 terminals just felt and looked completely unconnected. So there is instructions on removing the switch, or at least disconnecting it so you can get to it a little better. I may try that here and see if it's doable. You remove an Allen wrench head here to take the knob off, and then it's a matter of trying to disconnect the switch from the instrument body here. there's some instructions here about using a wire possibly to release a detent on there that may keep the switch in. So let's take a look and see how this goes. So knob comes off easily enough with an Allen wrench and a little set screw that's in there. I'm grabbing onto the cable. The cable has a round indented surface all the way around, and that's what keeps it from coming off the cable. Well, there's a specialty little tool that would get in there. I could take a socket, grind off and destroy the socket to make a couple of slots, and then I could get on that. I may actually see if I have the dexterity and the patience to actually leave this switch in place. I can get my hand kind of up on those two terminals. Let me see if I can back out one of those screws and actually get a wire run onto the top of that switch on the inside without taking it out. This may take a little dexterity. We'll see how it goes. If it's too hard, then I'm just going to have to do it and sacrifice a socket to take that nut off there. So I real quick soldered up some spade connectors here. I'm not even going to try to back those screws on that up on the inside of that dash all the way off and put ring terminals on there. I'm not a huge fan of spade terminals, but if I can get on there and jumper some current off of there, I'll be pretty pleased without having to remove or make a tool to get the lighting switch out. Alright, so more parts came in today. I've got a new fuel sending unit, which is basically a glorified pipe with a lever. Although this one's a little better because it's at least got a sediment filter sock on it, and a new gasket came with it. And I've already cleaned up the area around here with a brush, and I've blown out the tank just for the heck of it. So I'll just reinstall all this and get it ready to go right back in the car. Okay, now we're all back in here tight up against the washer gasket that came with it, and I cut a new brand new wire with new insulation and everything on it, and I put a nice big fat piece of electrical tape wound around it right here, and then bent it over here. So hopefully this wire will be in good shape. But I think I'm going to spray paint this black. I like to spray paint over these terminals here to help give them a little bit of extra rust protection. Alright, so I've passed the wire to the gas tank through into the trunk compartment where it was and put on one of these little temporary lever nut wire connectors here, which I'm kind of liking because you can take them apart, just flip these little orange levers up and down. You can connect and disconnect batteries or wires from wherever you're going to do. It's just a convenient way to make a connection, check things, and move on in life. And let's go see how we're doing inside the car. And I do believe, because I just saw it with my own eyes, the lighting in here is terrible. But I'll see if I can zoom in on the gauge there, which is reading very empty. If I turn the electrical system on, you see it jumps up to a empty low type reading there. So good. We're getting some kind of reading off of the sending unit there. Turn it back off. We drop off. I bet if I fill it up with gas, it will hopefully start to rise. Very good. And here we are about halfway filled up on the tank, and I'm going to flip the switch here just to see what it does. And that's good. We have okay, come on. Yeah, a little bit more than just empty there. So let's keep filling it up and see if we have the big win, which was not to be leaking gas either. Alright, we have completely full tank. I mean, completely full, and no more leaks, no more gas seeping out of the top, nothing from the drain. And our tank is back and installed, so let's call that little project done.